Welcome to the strange and mysterious world with William and Lee.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 17 of Strange and Mysterious World. We have Jennifer Maree coming on in a few seconds. She's going to be chatting about Family Constellation and, kind of what that's all about. So quite keen to hear what that's all about. So sorry, man, how are you?
Cool, man. How you doing?
Lekker, man. Right, let's bring on.
Okay, cool. Hi,
Right.
Jennifer.
Hello.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
How are
Good,
you?
and you?
Yeah, good, fine,
Excellent.
thanks. Yeah. Awesome.
Excellent.
Okay, so we've just
Looking very-
introduced you now
Yes.
to the people around. So now, what is Family Constellations? What's that all in aid of? What's the business? What do you do?
Okay. So family constellations is an approach to therapy or problem solving where a client can bring any problem. It can be family, it can be organizational, it can be land, it can be nature. And then you will set it up for them visually. So you will create representatives. They can either be people or they can be props. They could be stones or shells or cushions or chairs, whatever you've got handy at that moment. But it works best with people and it works best face to face. But of course, we can also do it online.
Oh, you
Okay,
can do it
so-
online. I don't know that.
Yes, yes,
It's a therapy
yes,
using objects kind of that are around or in and around the
Yes.
house or in and around you. Okay.
yes.
All right. And then what kind of therapy is it? So what's it in aid of? What are you trying to heal?
So what you're doing is you're not necessarily going to heal, but you will get some kind of a shift. So what happens is that because there's an awareness then of everything that's happening in that moment through the visual representation, there's something that is more insightful. There's something about when you put physical people or physical objects and display them in relation to each other, there's something that develops. And we don't know what it is. It's undefined. There are many people who have ideas about what it is, but there's something about the interaction and the way that people then perceive the problem in a new way because it's visually displayed in front of them.
But Jennifer, because it's quite a big fad. Like I don't say, it's like a big trend, or it's quite. What should I say? It's very popular at the moment. Or
It is.
So what I found was interesting. It was actually came from a Zulu background.
Yes, that's right.
So if you could maybe just maybe give us a bit of the history.
All right. So what happened was there was a Catholic priest who came to South Africa, and he spent 16 years in KZN, and he spoke fluent Zulu, and he was fascinated by the customs and particularly the relationship with the ancestors. And so when he went back to Europe, he actually decided to become a therapist and to give up the priesthood. And he studied with all the greats in Europe, and he did Gestalt and transactional analysis and psychodrama and all sorts of different approaches. And he went to America as well. And after several years, he came up with his own approach. And there's lots of speculation about where it comes from and how much of all the other approaches he's used. But it's a combination of a lot of different things. But it is uniquely his. And that's got a lot to do with the Zulu history. And so some of the controversial aspects of it are that there's a knowing. So when you get somebody to represent, say I call on a client and I say, okay, you choose somebody for you, and they will place that person in the workshop. So we've usually got a bit of space in front of us, and they will place that person in that space. And then you will say, okay, now what's the issue? And they will tell you, these are the people who are involved. So, okay, now choose somebody for that other person. And they will go and choose somebody who's sitting in the workshop. And they will place them in that space in relation to themselves. And there's something about that that person that comes to represent them actually can feel some of the physical happening of them. And nobody knows how that happens. But literally, if that person has terrible back pain, the person that they choose as a representative for them will experience that back pain. So, so something happens, it's called the field, and something happens in the field where the representatives are able to experience some of what the person that they are representing has. And through that, we are able to get information and insights. And this also happens online. So if I'm running this online and the person who's the client chooses somebody, and it can be anybody, can be from anywhere in the world. I've done these all over the world. You can have representatives from 10 countries. And the person who's the client says, could you please be my co-worker? And they will select, could be anyone from any country. And they say, yes, okay, I'll be your co-worker. Okay, your name is Stephen. And that person will represent Stephen, and they will experience some of what Stephen experiences. And then the facilitator, who would be me in that particular case, would say, so Stephen, tell me what are you feeling in your body? And Stephen will share that. And in most cases, the client will say that is unbelievable because that's exactly what's happening. So in most cases, unbelievably accurate. And through that, because you're getting all these insights from various representatives who are in those particular representations, you are able to then come up with some kind of new knowledge of whatever the problem is that you're presenting to the facilitator.
Okay. So that's kind of transference then. It's like you're transferring your issue onto an object or somebody else. So as an example, I understand now. I might. So there's no specific therapy for some like mental illness. It might be, man, I don't know. I've got constant headaches or migraines, and and then you choose someone that's in your group. I'm assuming that's kind of around the world. They're going to be your representative of sorts.
Yes.
That person then becomes your how would I say? Almost like your voodoo doll. Where you're transferring some of your issues onto that person, where they now can describe, okay, this is what's happening, this is where the issues are, and this is...
Yeah, you see, we don't like to use the word transference, and we don't like to say voodoo dolls. And also we don't like to deal with mental illness necessarily. So we would say, don't come to us instead of your psychologist. Don't come to us instead of your psychiatrist. We are in addition to. So we don't want to replace any medical professional. You know, they are still very necessary, but we might be able to help you to see things in a new light. But we also, if we're having somebody come to the workshop, in a lot of cases, we will get them to sign a document to say that they don't suffer from depression. So we prefer to have people who are not undergoing treatment.
Okay. Obviously, because you don't want to get involved in that sort of medical stuff where they can come back and the medical people can start charging you guys because you're not supposed to be involved with their clients, whatever. So I understand that. That's pretty cool. But so I want to ask. All right. So you've got a group, but now say you don't have a group. Because now obviously the person that you've chosen, like say for example, I would choose Will, and I've got say lower back pain, and Will's going to say, yeah, okay, this is what I feel, and yes, 100%. But now what happens if he's not there? Say I could choose a chair to represent me. How are you going to get the information from the chair?
Yeah, so obviously you get a lot more information when you do things in a workshop or with people as representatives, but often information comes to either the client or the facilitator. So for example, we do a lot of one-on-one work online. And so very often just by the person placing the objects as they come in. So you say, okay, choose somebody for your coworker. They then place that person on that. Then we would be working with a tabletop, and so they would place whatever it is they're using, shells or um, stones, or sometimes they use jewelry. It can sometimes I say bring 10 objects with you from the house. It can be anything in the house, it can be an ornament. And so as they place it, I'll say, now what's happening for you as you place that in the field? And just by what they're experiencing in their body, and they tell you, it helps them to see it differently. And then you'll say, bring in the next object, and how is that affecting the object that's already there? And does it want to move? And then you would move it. Sometimes they want to face a different way, or they want to move it further away from the new object coming in. And just by that, just by the relational information between the various objects and what they're representing, people see things in a different way. And very often they'll come to you and they'll say it's about back pain, but in fact, it'll end up being something about a relationship between two people in their life. So a lot of the time, somebody presents with one thing, and then as you're doing the constellation, more information comes to light. And through that information, people start to see something different in their life. And it could be a relationship with a parent, a sibling, a child, a partner, a co-worker. It can be something like I've had situations where, say, people are job sharing. And then I say, okay, choose someone for you, choose somebody for the person that your co-worker that you're job sharing with. And just by them moving those two objects around, they'll start to see, oh, okay, so that's in my body. I can feel this, and that's what it means. And just through that, they will start to say, okay, this is what I need to do in this situation.
But Jen,
Yes.
just to help also Lee maybe understand a bit better, because I
Yes.
came to one of your sessions,
Yes.
which I enjoyed thoroughly. And
So I'm laughing because Will's done everything under the sun.
but so basically, when I came to your
Yes.
to your session, there was I think there was 10 of us in this room.
Yes. Yes.
And you picked, because we were doing it for someone in particular that had an issue, a family issue that they wanted to
Yes.
resolve. They had a very sick father, and she felt she was doing all the work, and why wasn't any of her siblings helping to resolve
Yes.
the sickness of her
Yes.
father?
Yes.
And I thought like you would go there and we'd all have a session, and each get like
Yes.
a session. But it was just concentrating on this one person, which is great because it was so
Yes.
lovely to see that everyone came together to
Yes.
facilitate the thing to help this
Yes.
person. So then we all
Yes.
kind of role played, Lee, like that lady stood up and she said, she looked at someone in the room and she said, "Can you please play the father?" And then they got to say yes or no, because
Yes.
when I was in it and looking at what was going on, it got to do
Yes.
with a lot of like intuition, and you tapping into like something, maybe the ancestors, maybe the what's it, the cosmic consciousness, the group consciousness, or her consciousness. There's
Yes.
something in play that's to do with metaphysics or
Yes.
something. And like a lot of the people, they would go to this, it's like she would say, "Can you please play my father?" And the person would say yes or
Yes.
no. That person would
Yes.
come up and stand there,
Yes.
and if they accept it, because they have to feel that they are right for the part, because like otherwise you've got to like be quite sensitive to sit there and feel, okay, is it me or not? And if it is you, then you go up there and then you play the father, and the one played the sister, the one played the brother, and whatever. And it was quite remarkable because they were coming up with stuff that they wouldn't not have known about, but it made
Yes.
so much sense to this lady that
Yes.
it made,
Yes.
like, it was
Yes.
quite phenomenal watching it, because I'm thinking like, okay, are these people psychic or something? And what, like,
Yeah.
how are they channeling this information? Like,
Yes.
are they getting possessed? I don't know. I don't want to
Yeah.
use
Well,
a negative word. Sorry, not possessed, but like,
Yes. Yes.
something they
Yes. We
experience.
don't know. We don't know what it is. And as I say, many people have different theories for what it is. But Telanga, the founder of the work, discovered that if you ask somebody, will you represent my mother or will you represent my coworker? And when they say yes, they move into that representation and they feel what that person feels. And they have the bodily sensations of that person. And sometimes they have a lot of knowledge about that representation, but nobody knows where that comes from and why it happens. And it's very hard to say. So, we just say, look, it's the feel, there's some sort of knowing, we don't know where it comes from, but yes. And because, and 9 times out of 10, the person who's the client says, oh my goodness, that is so accurate. They just can't believe that these people who are complete strangers, that they've known for 5 minutes, and all they say is, will you please represent my coworker or my mother or my father or my sister, that they can stand up and within 5 minutes have this knowledge of this representation. So yes, it's hard to understand.
And sorry, and should I say rather, it's almost like channeling. So not like a specific. The thing is that when it came to me, because I was representing someone, I was getting a bit scared because I was checking like all these people are saying all this stuff, and it's like they've been this character, and it came to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to get possessed? Like, what's happening? Am I gonna? Is this person's soul going to enter my soul? I was getting like really nervous standing there. And then, but I think that also shut me down a bit because I wasn't being sensitive enough to know, because I was a bit stressed and like wondering what was going on. But then I was just saying the first thing that came into my head. Like I just whatever, like they would ask me a question, I'll just say the first thing that came into my head, and remarkably, it was very positive for that person. It helped them so much that they started seeing that lady that was so upset about her family. Started recognizing what everybody in her family was going through and why they were acting the way they were acting, because they obviously wanted to help, they wanted to care, but it was their own way of dealing with the situation, and she couldn't see it from that perspective. She could only see it from her very closed off perception, because of her anger and fear, and everything was clouding, and she couldn't actually see what was going on. And it opened up everything when she saw what everyone was going through in her family. It was like this release. She understood everything. It was almost like even the person playing her father also kind of like felt relieved and was like, oh my gosh, now thank God the family actually knows what's happening, and I can just move on. And I would love to know what actually happened to their father. I mean, he wasn't there, but the guy was playing her father. I would love to know what actually happened to him afterwards. But then people go away, because what I got so interested in it was because I met so many people that were doing it, and they were telling me the most remarkable healing experiences afterwards. Like the most profound things that they would have got the job that they never got, like this thing that was been troubling them forever was resolved. This thing with their family, they had a problem with their brother or their sister, and they were fighting constantly. They went to this family constellation thing. They dealt with the problem, but not with their brother and their sister, with some other people that were strangers. And then when they went back to their brother and their sister, the thing had like disappeared, dissolved, or whatever, and they had all got back together. It kind of whatever energetic kind of thing that was tying them up, whatever, was released, but they didn't have to be there, and they didn't even know about it. They were just like, it was
exactly.
And
so they don't need to be there, and they don't even need to know about it, and it's systemic. So whatever happens systemically. So when you leave the room and you leave the workshop, you can get home and the phone rings, and it's someone that you've refused to talk to or who's refused to talk to you. And they talk to you as if it's all been sorted out, because something happened in the workshop, something unblocks, something untangles. There's something about this new insight that the client gets. Like, for example, as you described, they suddenly see the problem from a different perspective, and they see how their family sees it from their view. So it's like they get a double-sided view. And there's something about that shifts the problem systemically. And so literally they can get home and the phone rings and the whole problem has been sorted out. So something happened in the workshop that it shifted. And so that's why I say it's not about solutions, it's about shifts.
And also the other thing that I also kind of understood was that because we are responsible for everything in our lives,
Yes.
that it wasn't actually affecting, well, it probably wasn't affecting those people in the room, but whatever that individual came to, like, that released, and that what was ever inside them or whatever was,
Yes. Yes.
because that's no longer there, then the thing flowed with the family members. So it's not
Exactly.
necessarily as changing the family members, or releasing whatever's within them or whatever. It's just
Yes.
you are actually the problem, and then it, like, so you know what I mean. I'm just worried people are going to come there and think they're going to fix their brother
Yes.
or their sister, but they're actually just fixing
Yes.
themselves within, which
There's a
actually fix.
shift. There's a shift within them. Yes, because from them seeing, and that's why I say it's about the interrelationship of the objects or the people. There's something about that mixing and that interacting that the client then starts to see the thing differently. And that shifts the whole system.
Yeah.
And there's something about that visual representation, whether they're humans or props, something about just seeing it all laid out in front of you shifts it already. So often people will say to me, I've already, just from seeing it laid out in front of me visually, I've already changed perspective.
Yeah. So I mean, there's also another way I like to think of it, like, as
Yes.
well. I mean, that's the more practical, but like normie way to think of it. But if we want to go,
Yes.
like, out there, going
Yes.
back to the Zulu, like,
Yes.
ancestral part of it, I feel like
Yes.
when you step into that space, you all there, you give permission for ancestral knowledge, ancestral spirits
Yes.
or consciousness or whatever to
Yes.
come down,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you kind of act as a vehicle or something like that. And then
So,
that's, and also, like, maybe because there's also a theory that we only, like, a very small part of our consciousness is in our body, and there's the rest
yes.
of our consciousness is up, wherever,
Yes.
or around us, or part of a bigger consciousness. So
Yes.
it brings more of that understanding from that field and into other
Yes.
people, from like their sisters or brothers or whoever else is in the room that's representing them. It comes from them, but in the
Yes.
conscious field into them. So that's my other understanding, that it could be something like that.
Yes. It can be. So, and every facilitator that you talk to has their own version of what you've just described, and some of them will describe it the way that you have described it.
So, what
Okay.
is your understanding? What in your opinion, in your own idea, what is the
Yes.
field?
Yes.
What is this field? How does it
So,
connect us
so
to
there's
everything else?
a so there's a man called Rupert Sheldrake, and he is a scientist, and he talks about the morphogenic field. So that everything that is alive in the world communicates, whether it be animals, humans, trees, plants. And so there is some way that, for example, animals will change their habits. And you'll see one troop of baboons change their habits in one part of the world, and simultaneously you can go to another part of the world and there will be a change in habit there too. And so nobody knows how these animals communicate. But Rupert Sheldrake's theory is that it's through morphogenics. So there is some way that all living systems communicate. And obviously humans use language. We don't know what their language is. So that's my belief. And I started working with something called process psychology in the 90s. And we were already talking about morphogenics then. So I have believed in this right from the 90s. And so I started doing process psychology for many years. And then I found constellations. So there's a lot of overlap between the two.
Okay, so now I want to ask a might be a silly question, but I'll ask it
Yes.
anyway. Um, do you think that perhaps the I always call it the Akashic field because, in my opinion, it's everything that happens on that realm. It's with its dreams and that. So, I want to know: do you kind of associate the dream world that we kind of enter on? A lot of people don't realize, but every night. Do you think that the dream world and this field that you're talking about is actually kind of one and the same? And is it perhaps not maybe in this dream state that these creatures are able to, because we can't see it, are able to
Yes.
communicate in these vast distances. That's why we, I
Yeah.
mean, it's invisible to us. We'll never know. And they don't talk like we do. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
just a
know.
thought.
I don't know. I don't rule anything out. You know, I like to be open and so, what people want to believe, I just know it works. I mean, I have done so much therapy in my life. I've been to so many different types of therapies. I've been to so many psychologists. And all I know is that when I did my first constellation, it was one of the most efficient approaches I'd ever met. So the most happened in the shortest amount of time. And it was incredibly useful to me. And then I started to see this happening with other people. And they described it in the same way to me. They said, "Oh, I've seen this one and I've seen that one. And I've had more out of half an hour constellation work. And also, you gain a lot through representing. So I will go and represent in constellations online all over the world. I will go and all over Cape Town. I'll go to a workshop and I may not do my own constellation, but I will represent in other people's constellations all day. And when I get home that night, I feel that something has shifted. So there is something about you representing for others that it also creates healing. So it's mutually beneficial. And that's one of the reasons why it's become so popular, because everybody who attends walks away with something. And very often you go to a workshop where they are dealing with issues that are yours. So, and I believe that's not necessarily a coincidence. You just happen to end up at a workshop where the 5 constellations that are done that day are all things that you have in your life. And so by the end of that day, you feel like you've actually worked on your own stuff. So what more could you want? Even if you don't get a chance through your own constellation, you're still walking away with some benefit from having been there. Plus, there's the added advantage that you've helped someone else.
Yeah, it's
So
like
you feel really
serving.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
And are you busy? Is it quite a busy thing?
It's very, very popular. I mean, I do many, many different approaches. I'm actually a management consultant and I do mostly organizational work. But I can tell you now that what I'm busiest with is, since I was trained as a facilitator in this approach, that is what I do mostly, because that is the biggest demand.
But
Okay.
it is funny because it comes from apparently from the Zulus, and the gentleman took it back to Germany, or where did you say it was from?
He was a
Uh,
German therapist, well, German psychologist, German priest, yes.
yes, and then but you had to go to Australia to study this, or
Yes. So I mean, it's just absolutely, it happened by chance, but I just happened to be walking down the road in Sydney. I was living in Australia at the time, and I saw this brochure and I thought, gee, that looks interesting. And the course was actually, like walking distance from my house. So I thought, oh, brilliant, I'll go and do this. This is easy for me. And it ended up being this work. So, I mean, and there wasn't a lot of emphasis placed on the Zulu foundation of it in Australia. But then I moved back to South Africa and started attending a whole lot of the workshops here and found that there was obviously a lot more emphasis placed on Hellinger's experience in KZN. So obviously in South Africa, I mean, we get so many visitors here from Germany, from all over the world, coming to go to KZN and see what Hellinger experienced and try and come to terms with where he got all the ideas from. I mean, there are PhDs that have been done on this, because they really want to understand, how on earth did he come up with this? And of course, the biggest question is, how do these people get this information? How can you put somebody in a room, stand, and how can they, within 5 minutes, be able to tell you so much about your own life? So,
yeah, but I mean, we all connected. I mean, the quicker some people realize that, the quicker we're gonna, love each other more and move on in our
yes.
miserable lives. It's like it's so frustrating, with all these normies like trying to figure it out and go. It's like you're not going to find God in a test tube or consciousness in a test tube, or it's like it's like a dog trying to work out how a car works. The dog's never going to know how the car works, so just forget about it. Just we're all connected. Just the more you sit in silence by yourself, the more you'll actually realize it and feel it, and actually, instead of trying to find it under a microscope, you'll find it just sitting there for half an hour every morning by yourself in silence. And that's the way, we can just stop asking so many questions and just actually experience it and move on and make peace with one another.
Yes, you sound like my teacher. So my teacher in Sydney used to always say that, will you please stop going into your heads and just let it happen? Because that's what used to happen when we were being, taught, when we were students. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And she'd just say, can you please stop going into your head and just wait? You just have to experience it, and you'll see it'll all come to you. And it took me several years. It took me about 3 years before I felt comfortable facilitating on my own. So I've been facilitating since the early 80s. I've been facilitating in organizations. I've been a training manager. So I've been facilitating for decades, and I still took a few years before I felt comfortable doing it on my own. So I used to co-facilitate in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but there also what's interesting, you say, is you can do it for businesses, and like, so if there's some problem with your business or like your house that you bought or something like that, and that's interesting. Actually, I remember you saying that when I was with you, but lucky you brought it up again, because I'd love to come back and do one for stuff like that and just see how that works out.
Yes, I mean,
someone's
they
stuck
do
in their
land.
business or something, then you can clear it all.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so you would, obviously you would choose representatives and it can be, you can do it for departments. You can choose somebody for sales, somebody for marketing, somebody for
Ex-wives,
production.
ex-girlfriends.
Yes, absolutely. And so for houses, I've had that, where there's been some problem with the sale of a house. And then we would choose the different parties. I've also had situations where people don't feel comfortable in a house. They bought a house and they just don't feel comfortable in it. We set that up. So it can be, that's why I say it can be anything, and very often whatever the person brings you is not what it ends up being.
So did the person sell the house, and is the other person comfortable in the house? Did it work?
And there you start off and you say, okay, so choose somebody for you, and then they choose somebody for themselves, and you say choose somebody for the house, and then it can become that it's another person in the family. So very often we choose something inanimate, but then it becomes obvious that it's actually a brother or a sister or a parent or an uncle or an aunt. And they will suddenly say, oh my goodness, I know who that is. That's not the house. That's Aunt Agatha, And because Aunt Agatha will say, this is what I'm feeling in my body. And oh my goodness, I recognize that person. So sometimes the person stands up to do the representation and they start describing what they're experiencing. And the client will say, oh my goodness, I know exactly who that is. And then just through the insights that are gained, they will start to see the whole problem differently. And then they'll walk away and they'll say, oh, okay, I see it differently now. But for a facilitator, I think the most wonderful experience for me is when I see a relationship healed. And that happens, I would say that's something that happens pretty frequently. So it can be between two siblings or between a child and their parent. And just by doing this constellation, they will look at each other and say, I see you. You are my mother. You are my daughter. And just by doing that, they can experience some kind of reunifying. And that's wonderful to see.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So how can people find you, Jen?
So I am in Gordons Bay. So I run workshops in Gordons Bay in Cape Town. But obviously I can work with anybody online. And also if I feel that it's not going to work so well individually and doing an individual constellation, which is me and the client, then I would say get some other people to be representatives online, or I would say to them, please, can you come to a workshop?
Okay, great. And have you got a website or something?
No, I haven't got a website.
Contact
So
information?
yeah, so they would just have to find my number somehow. Maybe from you.
Well, do you want to say it on the thing? Do you want us to put it in the show notes?
Jenny Maree Consulting at gmail.com.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook, Jennifer Dorothy Maree. So they can send me a message on Facebook or they can email me. But I don't hand out my WhatsApp number.
No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, that's
But you should
That
actually
you've
get a
got to get
website
through
going.
someone.
Might
You should get a
good
website
picture.
going up with testimonials
Yeah.
and kind of.
Yeah, I've just closed mine down. So I've had a website for decades and decades, and I've
Yeah.
just closed it down because it's all through word of mouth.
Yeah, you know, Jenny, you know what's the most interesting thing is that like I was speaking to this one energy healer, whatever, and I was trying to get into the energy healing thing, and I hate, like sometimes I hate my jobs, and I thought, okay, this is my escape. I'm going to get out of this thing. I'm going to become an energy healer, and I did all these courses. I spent so much flipping money. It was ridiculous, and anyway, it was actually quite frightening because I started this meditation thing, and some people would come to the meditation, and they would have such issues, Jenny. Like they'd come to me like as if, you know, like I'm a guru and I'm going to solve their issue. And then it actually got scary for me because like I just realized I'm not a psychologist. This is actually way over my head. I'm going to actually stop this because it's too crazy. Because they would come to me with some crazy issues and I just didn't know what to say to them.
Yes.
So, you know, making a long story, but like the thing is that I wasn't getting any work. Like no one was coming to me to get healing. I mean, well, thank God they didn't because I actually didn't know what I was doing. But there's so it just shows there's a lot of charlatans out there. I was one of them. So, so this one healer, he was saying to me, he's like, don't ever trust a healer that's advertising.
Yes.
Because it just shows they don't know what they're doing. And I was advertising. I was putting things on Facebook and Instagram and whatever. And he just said, never ever trust a healer that's advertising. Because the thing is, if you have to advertise and your stuff's not working, because the healers that I know that are the best, they don't put a thing out on the internet. They don't even have an internet thing. They're fully booked for like months. You can't even get a hold of them, but it's just from word of mouth because whatever they do is working. They don't have to advertise.
I don't think I've in all the years of being a consultant, I've very seldom got something from my website, very seldom got something from my Facebook posts. It's all word of mouth. It's been like that for years and years and years. So that's why I decided, why pay for a website? Because I've never got anything from it, you know.
Okay, that's quite interesting.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jen. Thanks so much for coming on. And I hope to see you soon. I'm sorry I missed the last one. I was a bit busy and I'm very bad at messages and that, but I'll come. Let me know when the next one's on.
Yeah, Wolf's got a lot of stuff to get rid of.
Yeah, no, I'll be there for months. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend.
You too.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
All right, cool. So you've done that as well. So what haven't you done?
I don't know. It was so funny. I was speaking to my cousin-in-law the other, I don't know, 2-3 days ago. We went for this dinner. It was my other cousin's 40th birthday. And he's a priest. And he was sitting there and he starts telling me about these exorcisms he's done. Or these like deliverances. I think they call them deliverances, whatever. And I'm just sitting there going like, geez, maybe that's the next thing I need to do. I need to go for an exorcism. The thing is, like, I don't want to go for my cousin's husband, because like then, you know, whatever comes out in that exorcism or deliverance, the whole family's going to know. So I was thinking, geez, I'm going to have to find a priest on the other side of town. Yeah. And I'm going to have to like go there. You know, like when you, like I used to live in a small town like a long time ago, and I went to this adult store, and it was like, because you know everyone knows everybody, and I just like put a hoodie on and I'm like sneaking into the adult store.
Like you try to go and get some condoms or something.
Well, yeah, I was going to get something a bit better, a bit more exciting than a condom. But like well, that's what I felt like. I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to go for my exorcism. Like go to the priest on the other side of town there. Like fucking go in there with a hoodie, park around the corner, and like walk it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It was quite interesting, man. Yeah, it just seems like every time we do a podcast, there's always seems to be a connection, man, to something around us, some sort of. I mean, from remote, because as she was chatting, I was thinking about remote viewing. Because I mean, when because that's exactly what you do. You actually, what a lot of guys think what happens in remote viewing is if they give you satellite coordinates of a place, obviously somebody's seen that place at those coordinates. You're almost seeing through whoever was standing there on those coordinates. You're seeing through their eyes. So it's almost like you transfer.
That's interesting.
To somebody else, and you're having a look to see what's at those coordinates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Like actually going, instead of actually your consciousness going there, going through someone else. I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like there's some, definitely connected somewhere along the line, dude. All of us. There's definitely a connection. Has to be. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was interesting, man. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Somebody? Nothing.
No, that's it, man.
All right, awesome, man. Okay, guys.
Good, buddy.
Guys from everywhere around the world, please like and subscribe, as what we always say. And we will chat to you next week. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers, right.